Okay, so we're now learning Achrei Mot and Kedoshim. And we listed the commandments. There's 28 commandments in Achrei Mot. 28 commandments. 26 of them are negative commandments, prohibitions. And that's in Achrei Mot. In Kedoshim, there are, believe it or not, 51 commandments. 51 commandments. We'll start to list some of them. Some are very famous, like love your neighbor as yourself. And some of the commandments over here, the prohibitions, are a little bit sort of what they call sordid, not nice. So let's just do the last couple. Here we have an example here. It is forbidden to have sexual relations with the wife, with your sister, with your wife's sister. Right? You married a woman that has a sister. Well, you cannot have relations with her all the time your wife is alive, even if you divorce her. Negative commandments. Here's another prohibition. You cannot have sexual relations with a woman that is in her period of menstruation. And this, even if it's not your wife, if it's not your wife, then that's another an additional prohibition. Like it says, Al Isha benira tumatolo tikrav. So it's possible for a person to have like 3 or 4 sins at one time. For instance, let's say, God forbid, a person has relations with his mother. So that's already, it's forbidden to have relations with your mother. It's forbidden to have relations with your father's wife, even if she's not your mother's. That's already 2. And if she happens to be that she's menstruating, that's another sin. So it says you're not only that, it says you're not supposed to tikrav. You're really not supposed to have any sort of sign of closeness, kissing, hugging, etc. Right? These are a bit complicated laws, but that's the law. Negative commandment. It is forbidden to, this is not relevant now. It is forbidden to pass your children over the fires or between the fires of this god that they used to worship called Molech. It used to be pretty popular at one time, Molech. Now remember that the Torah was written before the world was created, so obviously there was a big place for this Molech idolatry. It's a special negative commandment, especially in this idol. I mean, in addition, it's forbidden to worship any idols. That's in the 10 Commandments. Okay, next. It is forbidden to have sexual relationships, a man to have sexual relationship with another man. Like it says, isha. And this is a commandment not only to the one that is active, but also for the one that is passive. It's also the punishment is skila. Skila means stoning to death. And like I say, it's almost impossible to do because you have to warn a person and then you have to have witnesses and he has to immediately do the sin immediately after he is warned. So it's like almost impossible. But nevertheless, what's the purpose of this? Not to avoid punishment or get punishment. The point is to know that God doesn't like it. Your Creator doesn't like you. You can get away with anything you want to. And nowadays we see that people do sins that in the time of the Holy Temple, you would get koret or mita b'yadei shamayim, death from man, and people would die before they were 50. Now the person can do all the sins in the world and live to 100 years old. But we should know that God doesn't like it. That's the point. You're going against what God wants. Negative commandment. You're not, oh, we said we did this. 1 second, 1 minute. Yes, we did. We have to go to the next page. And these are going to be the last 2 here. Last one. Not to have relations with an animal. Like it says, or conversely, to have induce the animal to have a male animal to have relations with you. So this refers to a woman of this. Okay, at what age a child, if he's 9 years old and older, then he's a girl, if she's 3 years old and older, then she's already considered doing a sin if she does these things. Okay, now we're going to this week's Torah portion, the second half of this week's Torah portion, which is Kadoshim. And we're going to learn this inside. We're going to learn this in the Chumash itself. There are 16 positive commandments and 38 negative commandments. In other words, altogether, what did I say? What did I say? 48 commandments. Is that what I said? Somehow or other, just give me 1 second. One moment, please. Yeah, this is wrong. This should be 38 negative commandments, not 35. Should be 38 negative commandments. So that comes out to be 50 to 51. 51 negative commandments altogether. Okay. We'll see. We'll see how many there are. Ready? Let's just take the first two, and then we're going to go to the actual Torah portion with a positive commandment, to be afraid of your mother and your father. Like it says, a mother and father you should fear. And we're going to look at Rashi and see what he has to say. Negative commandment number 2. Don't turn after idolatry. Like it says, Lo tifnu al tifnu el lilim. Don't do any sort of idolatry. Usually this refers more to action, statues, bowing down, people bowing down. Listen, to bow down to people is not forbidden. If you bow down to the person because he's a god, then it's forbidden. But if you bow down like people bowing down to the king or things like this, then it's okay. You just have to be careful to understand why you're bowing down. If there's the famous story with Antiochus that he said that he wanted the children of Hannah and her sons to bow down to him, and they refused. So he said, okay, listen, I'll just throw my ring down on the ground. You just bend down to pick it up. And then, you're really not doing it. That was also forbidden. And they got willing to give their lives not to do it. So it's forbidden to go after idols. It's forbidden to make an idolatry, and it's forbidden to make an idol, even for a non-Jew. You shouldn't do it yourself. So you want to have a store and sell crosses and things like that? Don't do it, because it's forbidden to do. Negative commandment: you cannot eat anything that's left over from a sacrifice. Okay, well, let's just talk about all the sacrifices. All the sacrifices are eaten, but the ones that are eaten by the owner and also by the Kohanim, they have a time limit. It's either 1.5 days or 2.5 days, and there's a time limit. And if it goes over this time limit, the meat, then that's called nosar. That meat is called notar. It's left over, and it's forbidden to eat this. And I want to take just a 1 minute recording. Okay. All right. So we learned a few of the commandments. Let's go to the text. Let's go to the text. Ready? Here we are. Parshas Kadoshim. Parshas Kadoshim. Vayadaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. God spoke to Moses saying, can everyone see this? You can see this, right? Yeah. God spoke to Moses to say, Daber called Das ben Israel, speak to all of the congregation of the Jewish people, all 3 million of them. V'amart aleim, and say to them, Kadoshim yehiyu. You should be holy. Ki kadosh aniyah, because I am holy, Hashem Elokeichem, God, your God. And this is pretty general. It's pretty general statement. What's God saying? You should be holy because I'm holy. What does it mean to be holy? What are you supposed to do to be holy? Okay, first of all, we saw in the previous portion, let's go back to the previous Torah portion a little bit, because remember, this is a double portion this week. So here we go. Let's go back here. Let's go to Acharemot. That's the end. That's the end of the chapter. And we will see how does this go. Here. So it has all these forbidden sexual things that you're not supposed to do, right? It says don't do it. Don't do all these forbidden sexual things because you will defile the land and I will spit you out and the land will vomit you and you'll be expelled and you have to do my statutes and my laws and don't do all of the disgusting things that all these disgusting things that I just told you about, right? People having relations with their family and etc. Who is we talking? The people who dwell in your land and the Ger Agor B'Sochem, the converts, and also those who keep the 7 Noahide commandments. That's called the Ger Toshav. Because all these disgusting things the people did before you, and they defiled the land. So don't do them because the land will spit you out if you made it defiled, just like it spit out the nations that were before you. Because anyone who does all these disgusting things will be cut off from your people. Worshiping idols. Okay, and this, if you remember, we learned a sikha this morning about this. Ushmartem et mishmarti, and you should make a protection to my protections. You should observe, make negative commandments to my negative commandments, so as not to do from the disgusting things that were done before you, and don't become defiled. I am God, your God. So in other words, what it means, remove yourself from doing all these natural things that people like to do, right? Remove yourself. Natural. What's wrong with just doing what you want to? He says, well, I'm telling you, I'm God, and I'm telling you that you are Jews and you're not supposed to do it. You have to be an example what a human being is supposed to be. So that's what it says to be holy. We'll get to this when we talk about the Sfarim, but let's go see. Let's see. One of the commentaries. Okay, so now we're going to discuss exactly what does this mean. You should be holy. How are you supposed to be holy? What are we supposed to do to make ourselves holy? So this is one of the things you're supposed to do is just hold yourself back from being natural. Hold yourself back to being natural. But hold yourself from being natural in the ways that I said. It doesn't mean you should sit on a bed of nails or eat glass or something like that. Do things that nobody else wants to do. That you made that up. You have to do what God says because God is infinitely real. That's what holiness is. God creates the whole world. So let's have a look. There's also the famous Ramban, and that's one of the reasons I want to do it. And I see we don't have much time, but let's go. Rashi says, speak to the Jewish people. Malamed, this teaches you. Shene'amra parshazu b'hakel. This was spoken, b'hakel. Hakel says once every 7 years, the king is supposed to gather all the Jews together and speak to them right after the holiday of Sukkot. So it says, because the majority of the laws of the Torah are mentioned here. Kadoshim to you, what does it mean? You should separate yourself from forbidden sexual activity and from other sins as well. At any place where you find a person separates himself from sexual desires, you find holiness. Like it says, a Kohen, it says the priests, they have to keep away from a woman that's a zona and a halala. A zona means a woman that had relations with someone forbidden to her. Anyway, a Kohen that has relations to a woman that's forbidden to her, then if he refrains from that, then he says, I am God that makes you holy. Why? Because if a person has desire in these areas, it's almost impossible for a person to stop himself because it's such a natural thing. And, what's the big deal? Who cares? Like I say, two consenting adults. So, just pass the time. What's the big deal? And not only that, the desire is a very strong desire. So why should I suffer? Why should I just do what I want? Release this tension, that happens to myself. So you're right. All these things are natural, and there's a million excuses for it. And some people say it's the best thing in the world, but God says it's not. God says it's not that. If you have these desires, then you have to channel it in the right way. You get married, you have children, etc. V'lo yechalel zaro, like it says in another place, the Kohen should not defile his seed. And afterwards it says, I am God that makes you holy. You have to be holy, and that's what it says here in the next sentence. We'll see. Kadoshim to you. Ish avivi moti ro. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Kadoshim to you. That's with the Kohanim. He says that he's not allowed to take a woman that's forbidden to him. Okay, so we see that when a person refrains from such activities, that already takes a superhuman attitude a person has to have. And in order to do this, we see that's so very common nowadays in the world. You know, the big officials and big popes and the cardinals and all these people. They find them that they're all, you know, they're totally licentious, you know, people that just can't hold themselves back. So on one hand, you could say, so big deal, you know, all these movie stars, they make a big, you know, that's like really good. That's like having a medal of honor. You know, the more that a person is, you know, wanton or whatever you want to call it. But if it's supposed to, a president of the United States, Bill Clinton, couldn't hold himself back, that's disgusting. But if he could have held himself back, then that would have been a really you say, praiseworthy thing. And here we're talking about things that are just between you and God. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Okay, let's go to the Rambam. Here's this famous Ramban. So it says, all rabbis already said that this was mentioned in Hakil, etc. Kadoshim to you means that you should be separated from forbidden sexual activities and from sins. This is what Rashi we just finished saying, etc., etc., etc. He says, you should make yourself holy and you will be holy because I am holy. So you also should be holy from, okay. So I'm saying like this, says the Ramban. This is Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman. He lived like shortly after the Maimonides. Ulafidati, according to my understanding, this is not only talking about separating yourself from sexual crimes, like Rashi said. Aval aprishos hu amuzkarod b'kol makom b'talmud. This is talking about separating yourself, that the people who do it are called prushim. Now, if you remember, there was the Pharisees and what do they call the Sadducees and the Pharisees. Pharisees is like really a bad thing. Even if a person is what is it called? A pharisaical person means like he's two-faced or whatever. Well, the fact of the matter is, Purushim, those were the holy ones. They were the holy ones. This thing came from the Gospels, and they made these people into evil people because they interpreted the Torah not the way that was according to the liking of the church. But so they made them all sorts of names and called them all sorts of evil people. But really, the fact of the matter is, this is Rabbi Akiva, Hillel, Shammai, these holy people. They had the power to raise the dead, it said. And they were called the Purushim. Now, the word Purushim means a person who separates himself from mundane things, mundane desires. He gets married, they have children, they have houses, they have money, they have everything, but they're not attached. Those things don't rule over them. Those are called the Purushim. They do everything they do is only because of what God wants them to do. That's what's called, they're separated from their own lower desires. The Inyan is like this. The Torah warned us about forbidden sexual things and forbidden food. But on the other hand, it permitted a person to have sexual relations with his wife and to eat meat and wine. It's kosher. If so, it could be that a person will say, hey, I'm not going to do any of these forbidden things, eat not kosher food, go running after somebody else's wife. That's disgusting. But on the other hand, a Baal Taiva, a person who is filled with desires and lusts, so b'makom, instead of that, he'll be shtufi bezimas ishto, liyos shatuf bezimas ishto. So he'll take out all of his desires and all of his lusts on his wife, or he can have several wives. According to Judaism, you can have several wives, even though nowadays they don't do it. Rabos, I'll buy kosher wine and I'll be a drunkard. I'll drink 3 bottles of wine every day. Bezoli basar, I'll fill my stomach up with meat. Right? I'll have 7 meals a day. And then, one deal you have to have quail, and then you'll have, I don't know if quail is kosher, and you'll have to have, the best fish and the best this, lick their fingers. And then you also, to speak, what about talking? You could talk as much as you want, all the stupid things, waste your time. It's not mentioned in the Torah that you can't tell dirty jokes, right? It says something like that, right? That you can speak improperly, right? Speak licentious, dirty language. It says in the Torah, does it says in the Torah you're not allowed to do it? Doesn't say you're not allowed to do it. If so, you will be, and this is a famous statement, but you're going to become a disgusting person with the permission of the Torah. Right? Someone comes and says, hey, you can't eat with 2 hands and drink a bottle of wine directly from the bottle and finish it down, and you just let the person have it. You curse them out, right? You stupid bump, and you say all the F words and the this words, and then show me in the Torah where it says it's forbidden. So it says you can be, if you know the laws of the Torah well enough, then you can find loopholes around almost everything. Right? I mean, the things that are clearly forbidden, you're not going to eat lobster or something like that. So you eat tuna fish, but you stuff it down like a pig yourself. It says, therefore, it says, that's what the Torah is coming to tell you here. It says, once again, after it tells all the forbidden things in the previous Torah portion, and it makes all these things permissible things, right? It listed, first of all, the things that are totally forbidden. And it says, now it's coming to tell you that there's all the things that are permissible, not that are forbidden. Permissible food, permissible relationships, permissible, all these things, you also have to fence yourself in. And yim'at the mishkal, and you should limit yourself in sexual activity. Like it says, it says that people who learn Torah shouldn't be with their wives like roosters. You should only, sexual activity should be limited to doing the commandment. There's long explanations of this. Also the same thing, drinking wine. The miuto, you don't have to drink too much. Like it says, the Kasuv, it says on Purim, you can drink it until you get drunk, but not the other times. Like the Nazir says he's holy. Why is he holy? Because, and it says he refrains from the wine. But nevertheless, Yizkor Aros and Yizkor Mimenu Torah. And because how does he separate himself from wine? Because he reminds himself of the terrible things that came as a result of misuse of wine in the Torah. Noach, right? The story of Noach, he came out of the ark and he became uncovered. It says one of his sons came in and he circumcised him out to crazy. He castrated him, I'm sorry. And Lot, it says Lot, remember he had relations with his 2 daughters. Also, a person should keep himself away from impurities, tumo. Alpha Pishalos Harno Mimenu B'Torah. Like it says, even though the Torah doesn't say, like it says, Big Day Amoritz Midrash LaPerushim. It says these people were called the Perushim, they kept themselves, they declared for themselves certain things to be forbidden, even though they were totally permissible. Like overeating. Like it says, like a Nazir is called holy because he keeps away from dead bodies. Now it's permissible to touch a dead body, but a Nazir not. Also, a person has to watch his mouth and his tongue, not to say dirty language, and not to overeat, and not to eat in a disgusting way. And also to speak, you have to be very careful about what you say. A mouth, like it says, a person that speaks improper things, it's a very bad punishment. Therefore, a person should make himself sanct. That's what it means, make yourself holy. It means remove yourself from mundane impulses until you can become perishus. You can become what's called removed from the desires of the world. The world does not conquer you. You control it. Like we said a lot of times, if you want to, in your business or whatever, you have to have a Ferrari, right? It makes a good impression. You come driving up in a Ford, nobody wants to listen to you. So you have to buy a Ferrari. So you buy a Ferrari, Now the question is, who owns what? You own the Ferrari or the Ferrari owns you? I think I've said this about 50 times, but I remember when I was young, I lived in Detroit, and I had a next door neighbor, a person who lived across from me, and he had a couple of cars. That was like in the 50s, especially in the 60s, as cars were a really big thing in America. The business was booming and everything, and they had the competition, and there was really, slick looking cars that they had. And this fellow, he had like a new Dodge and a new this, and what was it called? A 409, and he had there was a Super Sport, the Chevrolet, and he used to polish these things up every day. And they really looked nice, the fact is, man. But you could say he was just totally owned by these cars. And he would polish it every day, and then would drive it like slowly around the block, and they would park it. One day I remember somebody must have knocked into him in the nighttime. I don't know what it was. He came out and he was just like destroyed. Like the whole sides of his cars were all. So in other words, who really owns who? The physical world owns you, or you own the physical world. So that's what he's saying. You have to keep away from an over-attachment to the physical world. Not that you have to keep away from the physical world totally, but you have to keep away from the physicality of it. So you can be rich and have a Ferrari and own a nice house and have everything you want, but not to be too attached to the world. There was a nice story just now. I'll give you an example. There was a fellow from Chabad. I'm not sure that I know him. Maybe I know his father. In any case, he was renting a house. This is right over here, not far away from me. A young couple, maybe in their 20s. And his daughter, a little daughter, she lost her earring or something like that in the sofa. It fell down into the crevice of the sofa. So it was one of these old sofas, that the cushion is joined in you can't take it off. So she was looking, she couldn't find it. So he put his hand in there and he was looking and trying to find it. And he noticed a few envelopes. And he pulled out the envelopes, and he had rented this house. The house was a rented house. And the lady that rented it to him, an old Russian lady, her husband had already passed away. And she was in like a assisted living home, in her 80s or something. And he put his hand in and he saw that there were these envelopes. And he took it out. You can't believe this. It was $100,000. $1,000 bills. There was also some euros there also. But altogether, it said it came to $100,000. Now, he could have kept this money with no problem. She didn't even know it was there. In fact, even more, it ended up, he called the lady up and he told her she had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. It seems that her husband must have stuffed it in there. And then afterwards, he forgot about it and he died. And he didn't tell anybody about it. And there it was. And so technically, he could have just kept the money, no problem. He didn't think about it for one instant, taking the money. There's an example that, also he could have just taken out a couple hundred, and just kept it for himself, why not? Maybe I don't think she even gave him a reward or anything. I don't think and for sure he didn't expect it. That's for sure. What he did do though, is her son came, she said she doesn't know anything, called up her son. He called up the son, told him about it. He came over. He's a doctor somewhere, totally not religious, a Russian guy, totally not anti-religious. So he said, listen, you get on this money, put on tefillin. That's the payment. I want you to put on tefillin. So he said, of course, what's the question? If he would have asked for half of the money, probably would have given it to him. He put on tefillin, he was very happy. And they have a connection between them. But the idea is, are you connected to the world to the point where it raises up in your mind, wow, all this money, oh, I can buy myself a new, who knows what, a car, a new suit or something. So it's not mine. That's what it means. Kadoshim to you. That's called being holy. Being holy. Holy means not that you're not dealing with the world at all. And you don't eat anything and you don't, that's not being holy. Right? That's called, you're being a hermit or whatever you want. Holy means you're involved in the world and but the world doesn't control you. You're separated from the world. Therefore, you don't eat too much, but you eat. You don't overdress, but you dress. right? You don't have your car, you've got a scratch and you're scratching your car. You don't have to go to a psychiatrist. Got a scratch, you don't like it, right? Somebody cuts you off on the street, and then you don't get road rage. Like it says about Rabbi Chia, that Rabbi Chia said he never spoke a meaningless, empty speech in his whole life. Well, but okay, now listen, now we're now dealing with the world, the real world, and you have to be a nice person also. You can't go out of your mind. You can't be, somebody asks you, can you tell me what time of the day is? And you go, right? So you speak nice, but you don't speak extra words, meaningless words. And if you watch yourself, you'll see what is. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't, tell a joke and be happy and be friendly and be nice. Doesn't mean, but it means not to go overboard. Don't let the world. Okay, so that's what it means. Don't go. Of course, it means not going after the sins. But here when it says kadoshim to you, it means don't overdo things that are permissible. All right, there's more to it, but let's just go further. Balaturim says. Kadoshim to you. Above it says Ushimartem et Mishmarti. Remember, that's what we started the class with. The end of last week's of the previous Torah portion. And right after that, it says in our Torah portion, Kadoshim to you. So it means that you have to guard yourself from even doing permissible things to excess. And then afterwards it says, be holy. That if you keep yourself away from doing sins, then sins will not run after you. Al yado, supposed to be a daled. Kadoshim, then God will help you from above. So here's a different thing. Kadoshim to you means that if you make your effort down here, then God will make you holy. That's what it says. Ani Hashem Elokechem. I am God, your God. Right? What does it say? Speak to the Jewish people and say, you should be holy, and I am God, your God. He says that's what it means. That afterwards, Daber b'nei Yisrael, to say that the Jewish people, they're the ones that unify God's name. And when they say that God is one, so that always means I am your God, when God creates everybody. It says the only ones that really declare loyalty to the one God who's creating us, that's the Jews. Eventually, everyone's going to do it. That's what Shema Yisrael Hashem Echad, that's what it means. Speak to the Jewish people. Afterwards, it says, Kadoshim, what is the thing of holiness? So it says, Adat b'nei Israel. An Eidah is 10 people. And they learned that out from the spies that Moses sent into the land of Israel, that there were 12 of them. And he said that there was the Eidah Hara, the evil congregation. 2 of them, Yeshua and Kalev, they were tzaddikim, they were good. And the other 10, they were terrible. So the other 10 are called an Eidah. From that, we learn, interestingly enough, from these people that they refused to go in the land of Israel, and God really got angry at them and made them. But that's what we learn. You have to have a minyan. 10 people makes a minyan. That's how we learn that everything which is in holiness, you have to have a minyan, 10 people. That's called an Eidah. Also, we can explain that Hashem Elokechem, what it says, Yokechem, I am God, your God. And afterwards it says, a man, his mother and father should fear. This is telling you that is equal honoring your mother and your father to giving honor to God. In other words, you should honor your mother and father like you honor God. Of course, if there's a contradiction, your mother and father tell you to do something against God, you can say, listen, I mean, I have to honor God and you have to honor God. So both of us, you can't tell me to do something against God that you're supposed to honor yourself. Okay, but it says a person is supposed to treat his parents like God. Give them honor, treat them with awe, respect. And afterwards it says, it says, my Shabbatot, you should keep. If your father tells you to defile the Shabbat, you don't have to listen to him. And so that's what it says here. It says what? Here, Ish imo v'aviv tiro, a man should fear his mother and father, but my Shabbatot, you should all keep. Therefore, if your parents tell you to defile the Shabbat, you can say, listen, Mom and Dad, I really want to honor you and I really respect you, but, I think it went a little bit too far this time because we all have to honor God. That's what it says. I am God, your God. Okay, there's a lot of beautiful explanations over here, and especially from the Or HaChaim, which maybe we'll learn a little bit tomorrow. This is only scratching the surface of the commentaries, but the Or HaChaim essentially says that the holiness of God is infinite. So if a person starts to sanctify himself, there's no end to how good and holy and joyous that this can be. That's why he says, Kadoshim Tihiyu, that you will be holy. In other words, the holiness, however holiness you make yourself, the holiness that's awaiting you in the future, in other words, appreciating God more and more, is unlimited. God willing, we'll continue this tomorrow, 8:15. Hope to see you all. Have a good day with Mashiach now. Shalom.